My name is Rinska. I'm part of the Electrum team, and it's wonderful to be here and to see all of you. And especially, it's exciting for me to welcome our own CEO, Dave Glass here. He's going to talk a little bit to us about the monetization of a payment stack. Thank you, Dave. Looking forward.
Thank you, Rinska. Thank you. Right, well, it's afternoon. Good afternoon now. I'm absolutely delighted to be here at the PIPC conference. It's such an amazing event, and it's wonderful that us as a technology vendor, we're invited to come and support the event. We see a lot of people we work with, and yeah, it's been just brilliantly run, incredible. And we're also very proud to be supporting the event. So thanks for coming to this talk. There's quite a lot on today. There's the international panel in the plenary. Anyone feel like they're missing out on that? Moritz? No. And then we've got artificial intelligence over there. Anyone? So this is more of a genuine stupidity on this side. So the artificial is on the other side. Okay, but you know where you are. Great. So yesterday we started with a very kind of depressing macro picture of the South African landscape. It was a bit of a downer, and really, I guess I'm here today. I'd like to talk about the upside. The micro picture in South Africa is actually fantastic, and I have a saying amongst the people I work with, the companies we work with. We say the macro picture, let's be honest, isn't great, but the micro picture is pretty good. Like, there's a lot of businesses out there doing fantastic businesses, building fantastic businesses, serving new clients. So I'm pretty positive. Right. So for example, I mean, if we just look at BankServe, their number of payments are increasing 15 to 20% a year, and that's in a country which we have very little economic growth. So I mean, that's as a starting point. I mean, it really shows you we have a fantastic trend behind our backs. So who am I? So I co-founded Electrum back in 2012. Prior to that, I actually spent some time at Nedbank and at Standard Bank. Is Herman Singh here? No. Okay, so I used to work for Herman Singh in his team, and I have a little story I'll tell you about. It's how to wreck your career. So what happened was I was on the graduate program at Standard Bank, and then Herman was 3 layers above me, but he did sit in a cubicle only sort of 20, 30 meters away, and he used to zoot around Joburg in a Z4 BMW, and we all thought he was so cool. And so he was in charge of technology research and development, but he was also in charge of IT security at that time. I mean, fairly early days on digital banking. Anyway, so being the smart ass, I send him an email, a spoofed email from BMW saying, "Dear Mr. Singh, your car is scheduled for a recall. Please do not drive your vehicle. Leave it parked. A technician will be dispatched." Okay? And I was like dying of laughter myself and Convener, like sitting there. Anyway, I heard this like scream from the other side of the office. Herman was just about to go to a board meeting. He needed his vehicle. These are the days before Uber. And I had to kind of like sprint to his office and be like, "I'm really sorry." But fortunately, Herman is a cool guy, as you know, and a great sense of humor. And we went on to have 2 fantastic years in his department working for him. So that's my Herman Singh story. But anyway, so 20 years in the payments industry. Electrum is a company that does payments processing technology, and really we have 2 verticals. One is what we call value-added services, which in our world means your prepaid airtime, bill payments, prepaid electricity, vouchers, etc. And we provide technology to financial services companies, which includes retailers, to be able to sell those products to their clients. And then on the payment side, we have a bunch of ACH payments processing platform, which mainly is sold to banks as a way to modernize their stacks, and also to do we do money transfer as well. So a couple of the larger banks use us to power their domestic money transfer. That's your cash out type products. Okay, and that we do, so to give you an idea, we do about 4 billion transactions a year. So we see a lot of transactional volume. Money transfer, for example, it's pushing about 55 billion rand a year at the moment, that we basically land in ATMs and in retailers, and then people can withdraw the cash. And then, of course, we do a bit of cross-border services with some of our clients as well and such. But anyway, it's all in the theme of transaction processing. You can see I'm not in sales, but here we are. 4 billion transactions. So Electrum has this amazing opportunity, and we all have the same opportunity. And this opportunity is driven by really three main forces. The first one is digital adoption. Now, we've all seen the slides. Herman put up a slide. There were other slides saying that, the penetration of smartphones, the cost of data, etc. Look, digital is going nowhere. It's growing. It's still growing fast. It's not tapering. Getting on the digital bandwagon is so important. The second thing is, and Kuben did a fantastic job of talking about the regulatory changes which we're going to be seeing in the next 3 to 5 years. Our bet is actually that the larger financial services organizations will be able to modernize and respond to those. So our strategy is to support those. We're not particularly trying to become a fintech. We actually working kind of with our customer group. That's our strategy. That's our approach. Some might have different plans, and that's fine too. Looking at you, Kuni. Okay, and lastly, of course, technology. So cloud services and the sort of the broader technology landscape has allowed us to provide the type of technology we provide in a much more cost-effective way, much faster, more agile. Cloud isn't cheap. Anyone who's faced a runaway AWS bill will tell you it's not pretty, but cloud enables agility. It enables very, very high uptime, reliability, consistency, all the things you need to ensure an excellent customer experience. So that's the opportunity we're playing to, and I believe a lot of our customers are too. So I'm going to talk through a few points on monetizing payment stacks. As a tech provider, we're not a financial services company, we're a tech provider, but I think I'm in a good position to potentially just share some stories about what we've seen in the market. I'm going to try and keep the names of the businesses quiet, but I'm pretty sure you'll be able to figure out who they are. But first I want to talk about fees. So I really liked, when I think about fees, I think about UPI in India. Now, UPI in India, as we well know, has no fees on person-to-person transactions, almost no merchant fees as well. And the question I get asked often is, who's going to pay for it? If we don't charge fees, who's going to pay for it? Right? So I'm going to try and tackle that question in this session. But on top of that, I'd like to quickly just address what the Indian market looks like compared to ours. Okay, so India, what do we know about them? Their economy, so their population is 20 times larger than ours. Their GDP is 10 times larger than ours. The GDP per capita is a little bit lower than ours, but their growth rate's much faster. Also, a lot of income inequality. Tax base, as a matter of interest, is only about, I think it's roughly 3 times our tax base, actually. So it's not so different to here. Now, India will do this year, 120 billion UPI transactions, right? And this year, South Africa will do 300 million real-time transactions. And I'm adding up RTC and PayShop there. Okay, so it's absolutely tiny in relative. But if we adjust for GDP and we kind of make some projection of what South Africa could be, we could easily get to 12 billion UPI, well, PayShop or similar real-time transactions a year. That's 12 billion. Right now, we're on obviously 300 million, so we can expect a 40x increase in payments. Right? Now, I'm guessing no one here is from core banking, otherwise I would have heard a right? Because everyone knows that core banking systems, it's really tough to scale. And I mean, if your core banking system is already under pressure, a 40x increase in transactions is not a pretty picture. But I I think it's going to be a reality that we're heading into, and frankly, I think it's going to change the landscape quite significantly. Now, because I'm such a fanboy of new payment types, of course, when PayShap was launched, the first 4 banks went live. I quickly put on my LinkedIn, I said, yay, these banks are live, here are their fees, and I didn't say anything else. And on my LinkedIn feed, I mean, not that you should look at my LinkedIn feed, it's as boring as everyone else's, but on my LinkedIn feed, people were saying, oh, the fees are terrible, rah, rah, rah. And I was kind of wondering, like, why the hate on fees? Why are people so upset? We're so used to paying like a couple rands for an EFT, et cetera, like, how's this different? And what I've come to realize is that people feel that the bank's interests are not aligned with their interests, right? So when you're making an EFT for 5,000 rand, or you, etc., 2 rand, it feels really inconsequential. It's not a big deal. It's fairly low frequency. But I think for a lot of us who are looking forward to the PayShap launch, we're expecting to use it quite frequently, potentially multiple times a day, right? And so when the fees came through, we thought to ourselves, I'm not going to pay 1 rand to, pay the bank 1 rand fee to send 10 rand. I mean, that's ridiculous. I can't use this for tipping. I can't use this to solve the problem I've been looking to solve with this product. I think that's where the negativity came from. So I'll just share with you what the fees are. And it's quite interesting to kind of think about the messaging that is behind these fees. So really, it's very interesting that some banks went with free, some banks went with scaled structure, and you end up with funny things. Like, so at the moment, for some banks, it's cheaper to PayShap from internally within the bank than it is to send an internal transfer, right? So there are some funny sort of anomalies happening. And what this is saying to us as payments professionals is that people aren't really sure where this is going. Like, there's kind of people testing the water, we're not too sure, and there's a lot of confusion out there. In any event, the other thing I don't like about fees, and in fact, I think why a lot of people don't feel good about fees, is because there's not a kind of that shared self-interest that I mentioned earlier. And so, I hate to say this, I've never been huge on card interchange, etc. I've never been in love with the card system, but as Stasha mentioned earlier, it works pretty well. So the thing about card interchange, and this is obviously the current card interchange in South Africa, I mean, the card companies aren't making money out of interchange, they're making out of fees on top of the, fees directly to the issuer and acquirers. But it's a great system because, if you get scammed, you can do a chargeback. So when you swipe your card, the merchant knows they're going to get the money. There's a lot of safety and security. It's a very consistent brand experience. It's very reliable. It's all the things you might expect. And so, the model that Mastercard and Visa have of paying the issuer, the acquirer gets to make a little bit of money, the consumer feels protected, and the merchant, well, they're not so happy about it because it's maybe more expensive than cash in some cases, but they get a pretty good experience out of it. So yeah, I've kind of changed my mind on card. But let's get on to business models that are going to make lots of money. So the obvious one is commissions. Now this whole commission revenue thing is great because compared to a fee, a commission is earned when the transaction is successful, right? So when the bank or the retailer or the mobile network operator performs a task on your behalf and you receive that value, they earn a commission on that item, right? And so this is a screenshot of PhonePe. It's one of the leading apps in India that supports UPI. So if you're shopping with UPI, you're probably using a Paytm or a PhonePe app. This is the PhonePe app. And PhonePe make their money in 2 ways. They sell VAS, much like the VAS we sell in South Africa on our banking apps and via our retailers, and they also provide some merchant services. And it's very different looking merchant services to what we have in South Africa, and I'll go into that a bit later. Okay, but I'm just going to riff a little bit about commissions here for a second, because there is a bank in South Africa, who I'm not going to mention, but who recently released some results on their commission income they are currently receiving on VAS. And if you pull out your cigarette box and you make a few scribbles on the back and you do some workings, firstly, that business has grown by 50% this year. Secondly, they're going to do almost 100 billion rand in VAS sales. Now, under IFRS, we all know, I'm sure you all know, You can't, they wouldn't show that 100 billion as revenue because you can only show the commission component as revenue. Retailers know this well, but that bank had 100 billion in sales. That's bigger than Pick and Pay. That's bigger than Massmart, right? So, I mean, ShopRite does 215 billion total sales, okay? And they make about 6 billion in net income, just over. That bank is going to make 2.3, I'm guessing, based on what I've seen, about 2.3 billion in net income from those VAS sales, okay? So we spoke about platforms earlier, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, it's like, it's incredible how well they're doing. Then there's a couple of retailers out there, and this in particular grocery retailers, who are doing fantastic on commission revenue. They're doing great business because the operating leverage on these things is amazing. You sell a product, you don't have an inventory, right? And then you pay the supplier 2, 3, maybe a week later, right? It's just fantastic. And you earn these commission incomes, which typically are somewhere between 1% and 6%, right? It's just a brilliant business. So, I mean, one of our clients, actually about 20% of the entire retailer's net income is in fact financial services / VAS, right? So it's you know, the margins are just better than milk and sugar, as it turns out. So so commission, I think it's just amazing. Obviously, all around the world, whenever you see these types of apps, you obviously in China, it's a very similar story. Lots of VAS being sold, etc. Commissions are such a great way to earn revenue because you earn client goodwill on top of it. You've performed a service. They get the face value of the product. They perceive it as like excellent value. Okay, so that's commissions. So that's a billion rand opportunity. I mean, the other thing you might ask is, the banks are selling VAS now. Will that mean the retailers are losing out? And I hate to say this, but the retailers are doing okay. They're doing pretty well. Like, turns out a lot of people still like to buy their VAS over the counter, right? And the retailers are moving into digital platforms, which they're going to use to leverage their VAS estate and sell that via digital channels themselves. So I'm not too worried about the retailers. I haven't seen the numbers decline much. In fact, for the most part, those businesses are growing 15 to 20% a year. And obviously the banks are doing even better. So where's all this coming from? Well, if we go back to my previous slide about digital adoption and the way that consumers are moving, I mean, you can see why they're supporting that. Merchant services. This is such a cool device. I really like it. So what Paytm does is they roll out these little devices. So now, you ever use SnapScan? I mean, we've all used SnapScan. Or MasterPass, for example. What's it called? Pay QR now. Scan to pay. There we go. So if you use Scan to pay, you scan, and then the merchant's kind of like looking for their phone, and somebody there, beep, beep, and they ask you to show, and they kind of stare at the little characters. Okay. So there's a thing called a sound box, which you get in India. And so when you scan the sound box and you pay, it's a static QR. You scan it, pay, 6 rupees. The little box says 6 rupees received. It's pretty cool. So if you're a merchant at a hamburger store, I mean, you're busy handling burgers. You want to have clean hands. You don't want to be touching your phone and going all over the place. I mean, you can basically, they're rolling out these things. And what do they do next? They added tap to pay on it as well for card. So India, as we well know, has MasterCard, Visa, and RuPay, their national scheme. But the point is that Paytm has built a whole business on rolling out these devices which solve a genuine problem for the merchant. Now, is that a merchant business like what we're familiar with? You buy a terminal from Verifone. Oh, sorry, I don't want to use the name here. You buy a terminal from a legacy manufacturer for 15,000 Rand and you rent it out for 500 Rand a month. That's not going to work. Right? So these new terminals, I mean, they're coming in at like $30, $40, $60, right? And they're sold to the merchants or rented to the merchants, and they might come along with an app, and they just work brilliantly. So I really love the service. If you look at the South African landscape, there's something really interesting happening. So if we look at, for example, Kazang, actually I have no interest in this market, but I really love what they're doing. So if you look at Kazang, Yoko, Flash, Shop to Shop, and Retail Assist, I mean, I think these are just the most amazing businesses, right? And obviously, those businesses are not built on what we call take rate, which is effectively the fee you earn for processing the transaction after you've paid away all your other fees as an acquirer. Okay, these businesses are built on a much bigger play, right? Which is around merchant credit, merchant point of sale, value-added services, etc. I mean, Kazang just released results. They sold 27 billion rands worth of VAS in the last year. I mean, that business is cooking, right? And we have to forgive them now that they used to be called Net1 and etc. I mean, I just think it's the most amazing business. They've got a fantastic team. They're going to do great. Same with Flash, Shop, Retail Assist. You know, as a team, they're doing an incredible job out there. Yoko, we see what they're up to in the market. They've done incredible innovations on the merchant acceptance side, slightly different market segment. As we well know, we can see their funding rounds are very public. That's a multi-billion rand company. And I can tell you now, it's very hard for traditional banks to understand that company. They're saying, I don't know, doesn't make sense. We're not going to make 1% on every transaction. That doesn't pay for it. But that's not what they're doing, right? So merchant acquiring is just, it's just a way to get to the customer. From there onwards, they can obviously do all the things I mentioned, lending, POS, etc., etc. Okay, so merchant services, still got a long way to go in South Africa. We're going to see a lot of changes happening. What we've seen overseas is highly vertically integrated merchant services company. I'm not sure that South African banks are going to be really in acquiring, to be honest, in the near future, or in a very limited way. I don't think they're going to be in the same sort of level they are now. It's unlikely you're going to go and see a sort of like a big 4 bank terminal at your restaurant, because they do have a slight advantage at the moment. So if you're a bank, you have the on-us advantage. So let's say you're one of the bigger banks, 20, 30, 40% of the cards are your own cards. So you make, you have a pricing advantage. But to be honest, with interchange under pressure, is that really a long-term advantage? I'm not sure. So I'm really excited about what these guys are doing. That's a multi-billion rand opportunity. Okay, so the next one is add-on services. So when we say who's going to pay for it, and UPI, etc., or PayShop, I mean, one of the classic things is what these fintech guys are doing with Bike Hub is when you sell your mountain bike, you will only receive the money after the buyer has received the bike. It's escrow services. We're very familiar with it. That's a typical type of add-on that we can charge for, and people are very happy to pay because the perceived utility out of that is massive. Other add-on services. Okay, so obviously cross-border money transfer, right? Where is cross-border money transfer in South Africa at the moment? It's around about a 30 billion rand a year business that moves out of South Africa. 50% of that is still informal. There's 3 major authorized dealers with limited authority, sort of Makuru, Halepeza, Mama Money. I mean, these are incredible businesses. They're only about 10 years old. They're all multi-billion rand businesses. It's been very hard for banks to address that market because it's so hard to bank foreigners. And that relates back to what Kevin said earlier about KYC. So, for example, in South Africa, you cannot phone the Home Affairs to get a confirmation of an asylum seeker's documentation, right? You can look up a South African ID, but you can't do anyone else, even though they have that information. So, these are the challenges. It's really difficult, so it makes a lot of sense that these guys are thriving. But right now, we're being left out. And the last massive opportunity is, as I see it, is data. Now, we've heard a lot about data, and a few years ago it was very fashionable to say, we're not a bank anymore, we're a data business, et cetera, et cetera. And obviously, that's kind of died down. But what I can say is that there are quite a few companies in South Africa making billions on data, right? And what's even driving that even faster now, you will notice that with POPIA and GDPR, cookies are no longer allowed to be as pervasive as they used to be. So it's very difficult for Facebook, for Meta, Alphabet to track you anymore. So they can't really do targeted advertising. But we all give our retailers and our banks all of our information. And when we sign up for a loyalty scheme, what we're signing up for is to say, hey, I'm cool to receive targeted advertising. It's right there in the T's and C's if you look at it. So some of the retailers that are running loyalty schemes are already, and have for many years, been making well over, I'd say, the current market size in South Africa is somewhere between 1 and 1.5 billion. That's on taking data from all our loyalty schemes when we swipe our cards and do all that kind of stuff, and they on-sell it to their suppliers and advertisers who want, and obviously they anonymize it to some extent, but they want to be able to target their advertising, right? And they also want to know how they might position their products in the future. So that is well over R1 billion. And on top of that, there's this new thing called retail media. So the ShopRite program for this is quite well known. It's called Rainmaker. What is Rainmaker? It's an ad agency that lives inside ShopRite, okay? And they are making, well, it's not publicly disclosed, but I'd say between Rainmaker and 2 other retail agencies I'm aware of, it's well over R1 billion, okay? That's leveraging existing estate to do highly targeted ads. So when Morty walks into the store, he's going to maybe see on his phone an ad for a 6-pack of Black Label or whatever it is you like to drink, Morty. But that's the type of advertising they can do. And right now with the cookies and the privacy and retailers are selling that, but so are banks, right? And so now I ask myself, if a bank is making 100 billion rand selling like a whole array of digital products, why are they not advertising? I mean, wouldn't we like to see advertising in our banking app? I'm joking, of course. We probably don't want to see advertising in our banking app, but I think it's quite likely we're going to see a very different mental approach to what banking apps are, right? And yes, obviously the end game looks like something like the PhonePay app where there is advertising. So internationally, what is advertising worth, right? So Walmart, parent company of Massmart, as you well know, $2.7 billion a year they make on advertising sales. Okay, Tencent in China, $2.3 billion a year. Amazon, right? And this is on Amazon properties. They're making $37 billion a year on their advertising. So when Herman put up that slide yesterday, I don't know if you saw it on advertising, Amazon's fighting with everyone. They didn't even feature, right? So Amazon has got this amazing machine to do advertising. So big data we think is going to be a massive driver, but it requires a serious change in how banks think about how they work with their suppliers and their partners, etc. And right now, those structures just don't exist in the corporate sort of makeup of banks. Okay, so just to conclude, I've shared with you quite a few seriously large opportunities. All of these opportunities are growing double digits, if not more. I think this particular group, the PASA group, we're very well positioned to look at diversifying our businesses beyond fees into these alternative streams. I think that especially when you take this back to your bank or retailer or mobile network operator leadership, we're in an environment now where interest rates are going to rise for the next while, right? Transactional revenue has never been more important. And when you go and say, well, we want to start charging a fee, it's going to be quite a difficult sell. But having these in your back pocket, identifying these new pools of transactional revenue mean that you're going to be able to make a massive contribution to your organization's income statement using these. So thanks for your time. I hope it's been useful. And please fire away if you have any questions. Okay. That's from the previous session. See, has anyone loaded a question yet? No? Okay. Okay, so a question I'm often asked, just as a way to open it up. What does the landscape look like outside of South Africa? What's happening out there? And to be honest, the outlook for retail banking is quite bleak. Retail banks haven't managed to find a really successful business model that works. And I'm talking about copying and pasting through your standard sort of developed market, save, insure, invest model, right? But what we have seen is the mobile network operators. They are doing just great. There's quite a lot of work to be done. I mean, they are, for the large part, in my view, they've got a long way to go in terms of functionality and the services they can provide. But they are extremely well positioned in terms of what they can bring in terms of financial services, especially in the VAS space, and finding this model which works well. Another question I get asked a lot is, how do we measure this impact, right? So what's the ARPU of a MTN subscriber in South Africa? Does anyone know? I mean, you all know what ARPU is. It's the average revenue per user in the country, right? This is a number that mobile network operators care about a lot, right? So it's somewhere between 70 and 90 rand. Okay, that's what it is. What's the ARPU of someone on the Capitec app? So 10 million subscribers. I mean, you might say on the app they make about 10 billion rand. It's 1,000 rand. Okay, so you can see how these apps are incredibly powerful in terms of generating revenue. Yeah. Any other questions? Let's see. All right, there's a few come in. Cool. Let's see. Okay. Okay, so I think there's quite a few questions about analysis paralysis around value propositions like PayTM and how fast modernization will happen in South Africa. And I think, to be honest, my view is that it's all up to our friends at the SARB. They have a plan. They have a great team. They're executing on that plan. I was quite surprised in this conference that we didn't have more talks by the SARB because I think that there's a lot of very interesting information in there. So, for example, we're expecting a Kofi Amendment Bill to be passed through Parliament next year, which is going to pave the way for a legislative framework, which will allow for more participants and a bit more progress in that department. I think that one of the challenges of the South African landscape is that we're not a country that likes to do mandates. So in PIPC in Brazil, all the banks were mandated to do it. You didn't have a choice. In the EU, they're currently proposing that all banks will have to offer instant payments, right? And they're saying that all banks will have to offer proxy resolution. So if I'm sending money to Elise, it'll come back and say, you're sending money to Elise, you confirm that, and then you send your money. So that's going to happen. In India, it wasn't so much mandated, but it was pretty much mandated, right? In UAE, it's mandated. So in the US, it's absolutely not mandated. And there's also subtle kind of mandates that go out. So I think it's going to be a kind of a combination of SARB pressure, like mild pressure from the SARB, and I mean, this is really off the cuff, but and also I think some of the banks are going to see the opportunity for a first mover advantage, which is absolutely true of digital markets, and they're going to step in and make some moves. So that's going to be quite interesting. I don't know if you've all seen Standard Bank. On PayShop, they've launched a number of domains, including SnapScan. Now, I think that's brilliant because what we've seen in most markets is that people don't like to pay with their banking app. They prefer to pay with a payment app. So Standard Bank has been the first bank to actually load a PayShop domain for a payment app, which happens to be SnapScan, which they've had in their stable for a long time. So, I mean, these are the kind of things we've got to watch. It's very interesting to see, and let's see how that plays out. In terms of VAS revenues, I think someone said we're seeing lower returns on VAS, somehow some reaching 6%. So I think what we're going to see is early. So for example, sports betting is a very fast-growing category at the moment, and they've been paying higher fees in order to attract more customers, etc. And more distribution. Obviously, something like prepaid electricity, which a lot of people see as a must-have, that pays close to 1.5–2%. So in between there, typically things start at the top and work their way down. International airtime in some places is still at 20%, right? So there's a ton of movement. The challenge as a VAS business person is you have to constantly manage your portfolio, right? You have got to keep shopping around, buying, and you've got to negotiate hard with your distribution. And obviously you have the power, you have the distribution, the platform, so you have some negotiating leverage, right? I mean, already in South Africa, like well over 50% of prepaid airtime is sold via banking apps. So, I mean, they've got some leverage. Yeah. Let me see if there's any other questions. We've got a couple more minutes. I think the one I want to answer, there's an answer about crypto, private money issuance such as Circle, USDC, USDT, etc. So right now, I think the SARB has been, as I mentioned, they've done a bunch of interesting projects. However, and the regulatory landscape is becoming a lot more clear. Now, I think barring external shocks, crypto won't be a big thing in our environment, to be totally honest. However, where we are in South Africa at the moment, we're in a very difficult situation. Fiscally, we're in deep trouble with a massive deficit. We're about to head into a global possible recession, given the war that's just broken out in the Middle East. So my view is that I'm taking forward cover on my AWS bills, which are in dollar, okay? And I think we should all be thinking about how we try and hedge the rand as much as we can. None of the signs look good. What that will mean, though, is that for some people, crypto will become more attractive, and we'll probably see a bit of an uptick in interest in crypto in South Africa, given the volatility of emerging markets. It's not only a South Africa thing; it's a emerging markets versus flight to quality story. So yeah, that's a macro negative there. Then I think, how do we assist in the modernization of the payment system? So our approach has been work closely with our customers, understand their needs, bring the extensive technology that we've built over the last 10 years to help them out. So what we did, for example, was we built the simulator for PayShop with BankServe, and that was purely to try and help them accelerate that the whole rollout of PayShop. And we've spoken about that before, and it was great working with BankServe. And we should all look to assist them as much as possible. I think that the modernization journey is a long one, and we're still going to be talking about this in 5 years' time. Yeah. I'm going to stop there. I'm sure you've heard enough of my droning. Thanks very much for attending. I really appreciate you all being here. It's great to see familiar faces and some new faces. I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. I found it fantastic, and have a great lunch.